I've seen every season of that.
Seen that.
That was one. I don't know that I've laughed harder than at some of those episodes. I am. I just watched. It wasn't like I was doing anything. Oh yeah, I was at my brother's house in California. That was hilarious. I got home, showed Jody, my wife. She's like, "This is stupid." Danny McBride. She didn't get it. But yeah.
Don't get me wrong, he was really stupid.
Yeah.
Like an athletic point.
I know.
Oh, so you could have just said,
Land of the Lost. So I guess in the movie, he's the last living relative of Crocodile Dundee from Australia, and he comes in and he's this, American. It's got Chris Hemsworth in it, and they're trying to get him.
Did you watch the commercial with that Super Bowl?
Yeah.
Everything. I'm just here shaving.
Just shaving. With that blade.
Oh, I didn't really know the national movie. I thought it was so fun of it.
No, it's a new one coming out this summer. Just called Dundee. Oh, those, I hated those.
Really? That was the highlight of
I could not figure out what he was saying at first. Yeah, but before he was saying tied it or tied me or whatever he was saying, I didn't even know what it was until afterwards.
I think they've been saving all that money it's spent on Super Bowl ads to get them the lawsuits.
That's probably a big part. I liked the Pringles ad. That was funny. I like. That's.
Tourism Australia, Dundee Jackson, the legendary legend returns home in a video short.
I saw the
It's in the theaters. It's in the. There might be a short, but I know it's a full movie.
Yeah, it does mention some of the legacy of the white-tailed deer hunter and hero bill, but of course, tarantula.
Huh.
It doesn't have any other. Of course, who gave it on the ballot, but
No. Not the Bible. All right, lesson 2. Sorry to distract you from down under. Shadow copies, considerations, restore. We have talked about this several times. We'll skim through this. Shadow copies. When did we first get shadow copies? With what server? 2003. Yep. And it wasn't bad in 2003. And the basic settings were the same. You could set up where you wanted them to be done, how often. Once they reached a certain amount, overwrite previous older ones. So nowadays, disk space is still an issue, but not quite the way it was. We talked about previous versions, right? So if I'm making a change on one, should find it and save it. We talked about it yesterday where Greg has a employee. He's like, hey, I accidentally deleted the wrong file. Can you go back? And he's going to go, oh, man, it's going to take forever. I need some dinner. Meanwhile, it takes him 10 seconds.
Wouldn't you let your be able to recover from that?
Some of them you can. Some of them I would not even put close to it. Imagine trying to explain how to restore a shadow copy dealing with different versions to somebody who doesn't even understand what a shadow is. You could remove that permission so that it doesn't propagate, but yeah, you could run into some problem. Now, you could also delegate control, so I would delegate to several people, but some of the individual people down there, no.
So I don't know who decided how this crackerjack idea, but on a shared drive, an old job, like it just had it, on that drive.
Yeah.
But anybody made a folder.
Within that main root folder? That doesn't sound very good.
So somebody out of the pool had to figure out, well, not anybody, but I would have it anyway, so I don't know, but we have SOPs and considerations.
even accidentally probably.
Well, I don't know about like people that eat, but yeah.
That's true.
But yeah, I was just like, I laughed. I thought it was funny. I was like,
Well, I bet hopefully after that experience they changed the way they did it.
yeah, I was just told me take everybody off it except for the admin and the boss.
Yep. Which is, I like the start most restrictive and loosen as opposed to the other way around. All right, so previous versions, we're dealing with, it's tracking changes, and if we remember these snapshots, it's not a full snapshot. Each snapshot is just taking the changes. So it's not like if I had a 5 gig drive and I saved 2 snapshots, it's 5 gigs plus 5 gigs. It's going to be 5 gigs plus maybe a 10, 20, 30 meg change. So you're going from 5 to 530 to 590, depending on how you want to do it. And you also have to figure out at what point is too many snapshots. So you have to figure out the balance within your organization. In the past, if I wasn't using shadow copies, or if I didn't use them now, how would I go and retrieve that file when the employee says, hey, I accidentally deleted the wrong file? There's 2 things we can tell them. You're screwed. Sorry, you're out of luck. Don't be an idiot, do it yourself. You can add money to it. Oh, let them, you could barter for this, barter for the time. But there's one other thing you would do. Say the CEO comes to you. Greg, I need this file. I accidentally deleted it from 2 days ago. And what's one of the things you could do?
Send them a link.
I have to go check the backups. I have to restore it from a backup.
And that is important because that way the understand value is back up.
And now it could take you hours to do because you have to restore. What's that?
That depends if your place even does that.
That's absolutely true. And it also depends, did they do full backups? Did they do incremental, differential? So, or just a full backup. If you've got the space, the full backup each night at a certain time is easiest because you can just restore the whole thing. Otherwise, you have to restore Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday on top of each other to get to the Saturday. So you could tell the CEO, sorry, you're out of luck. I told you months ago we needed a backup solution, and well, now he'll understand it. But it used to be much more work doing it. Okay? No. They'll use drives, they'll use cloud access.
Right, and they we've got almost redundancy in RAM. It doesn't make any difference. Just plug in there and fire it. It's done. Because if it's permanently attached, you don't have any way to protect it.
And hopefully we can start to see that one little thing can affect so many other little things at the same time. So you could have somebody that knows DNS very well, but unless they know IP address allocation, unless they know dealing with folder shares, unless they know group policy objects, even to a certain extent, they lose so much ability. So here we have we're scheduling our shadow copies. So here for this person, 7 a.m. Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, at every week. We can, in this case, it's happening on a weekly basis, 7, and then every week we're doing a Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, nothing Saturday, Sunday. And I think I said that based on who you have in your organization, you could actually allocate different time slots for different groups. So you could have floor 1 is going to do it at 7, floor 2 is going to do it at 9 o'clock, so now you're actually saving some of the traffic as well.
If you're doing shadow copy during that time, is that going to impact the address for them?
Yes, absolutely. It will definitely affect it the first time when you're creating that initial shadow copy. When it does changes, it will not be as intensive, but yes, it will cause additional traffic. So having a fast backbone, gig, 10 gig, whatever it may be. Okay? So this was pretty cool back with 2003. So 2003, 2008, 2012, 2016. So 14 years ago, 17 years ago, shadow copies came out. Okay, and again, do I have the space? How often? And who is most important? And I guarantee Greg is going to go to his CEO and say, I am backing you up every single hour of every single day. That's what we do. Or you could tell them that and just, okay. Well, I mean, depending on how big you are, it does take a hit. I mean, it's chewing traffic, it's chewing disk space. But you have to sit there and decide, are copies going to be easier than spending days doing tape backups or restores? And some will say you could do it in 15 minutes compared to sometimes hours and hours and hours. And a lot of times if you're doing with a tape backup, your answer is just no. Sorry, we don't have a restoration process, at least for clients. So we deal with previous versions. So in this case, we're just going to restore those from the previous shadow copies, and users can go through, if we choose to, and can restore versions to a file or folder. They can go through and look at the snapshot. If we go back here, this isn't the exact window, but they would see in a box, they would see the snapshot from Monday, from Tuesday, from Wednesday, from Thursday. So then they can restore it, make sure it's the right one, and then they can also copy paste if they choose to. Basic things for dragging and dropping. I just had a question. I lost it, never mind. It'll come to me.
So can you sit there and make it so they can't have like 16 versions? Maybe like 2 one.
Yeah, you can say I'm going to allow 3 copies, or I'm going to allow however many copies, but if it runs out of space, then I'm starting to delete old ones. So you have all those different versions.
Kind of like
Yeah, in fact, you can implement quotas into it. Now, the thought process that goes into it, do I tell my employees that I have a snapshot of all their data from every single day for a month? Heavens no. Because you're going to be getting calls all day long. Hey, can you restore this? Can you restore this? So you will typically have a policy that says every person has 3 days or 5 days, so at least it's backed up, shadow copied for a week. Maybe you do it for 2 weeks, but you tell them it's 1 week. Because I guarantee if you say you have a month worth of them, they will take advantage of that. Oh yeah, well, we do everything we're supposed to for them anyways. Right? Okay. That's the happy person. All right, shadow copies. There's some clicking up here. Or, no, it's right. No, it might be the projector. I know, but when I walk over, when I'm standing here, I hear that.
I can hear that bit right there. But you know, it sounds like a bug almost. Like,
It's like echolocation.
What is that projector?
so that's been going on for at least 5
Like
years.
a waver, like a dull.
Yeah.
It's a ductwork.
So,
It's the noise of the ductwork.
very quick, interesting, non-related story. I grew up in New Jersey. We would go to Washington, D.C., to the Capitol. And there was a place in the Capitol where all the old leaders used to sit down for their different meetings, way long time ago. And I forget who the person was. It could have been Alexander Hamilton, whoever it was, would always lay down on his desk with his head down. And nobody could understand why. And this was one of the one of the people in our church, in our ward, worked for I think Senator Hatch, so he kind of knew some of these things. And he had one person sit down on the chair, put their head down, and then he walked across the room and whispered. Can anybody hear me? No. This person, I can hear you perfectly. The way that room was built, so everybody thinks he's just lazy, but really, he could hear everything better than anybody else could. That was kind of cool. Bet you don't, now you know that. I know this guy who knows a guy who did this in DC from way back when. Okay, new to 2012, work folders. This is a role or a service, so you're going to go into your management console, and this is a role or service you are going to install. This is similar to offline files. Yes, overlying home group in some ways. This is something we did not typically have to deal with 8 years ago. The whole idea with work folders is whether I have my phone, my laptop, or I'm sitting at the desktop at work, I have access to the same files. I'm not creating 3 copies, they're the same files. And if I make a change to one, the other 2 can automatically see it. If I make a change to one, and Josh makes this change to a different one on his phone at the same time, there could be a conflict. The machine, work folders will automatically compare the 2. If there are any changes, guess what? It creates one of them with a second name on it, a version 1 or a version 2. So they're going to let Josh, instead of saying, well, we think this is the right one, it's going to have Josh 1 and Josh 2. He opens them up and says, oh, I want to get rid of 2. 1 is the one that I need. A couple things we need: Active Directory. You also need to have internet access into your work, right? Because if I'm using my computer at work, it has to be able to let my mobile device or whoever else sync. We still have security. We have our policies, which we'll see a little bit later. We can go through, basically this is me going through like Verizon or Sprint, and you can set up features so if somebody steals your phone, it wipes the data. Okay, so it's that same concept, but we're taking it to a corporate model. So now the corporation can have policies saying if anybody loses their phone, as soon as we are notified, that device is locked and all stuff will be erased. They can set that up internally as opposed to, hey, call Verizon and let them see if they can find it for you. We did not have this or even thought about this years ago. 8 years ago, how many of us had smartphones? When did the first iPhone come out? 2007. So 10 years ago, just over 10 years ago, really we started to get into kind of the real smartphone, not like the little Trios or the little Blackberries or what was the little Palms that had like a touch screen and a keypad, and you had a little pen that or stylus that you could use. No, those aren't, well, at the time they were. Uh-huh.
Had the normal touchscreen screen on it, but it actually had little round bumps, for a keyboard.
Yeah.
That was so awesome. You can't buy one of those anymore.
No, you cannot. There was also here's a stupid / not stupid question. Who's heard of BlackBerry? Okay. Nowadays, you might have people say, I've never heard of BlackBerry. Years ago, back again in the mid-2000s, if you wanted to have a mobile corporate solution, it almost had to be BlackBerry. And who's heard of a Biz server? That is a BlackBerry server that I install local, and I now control those 1,000 BlackBerry devices that can connect. We could not do that with Android. We could not do that with Apple. If you wanted that extra security, you had to go BlackBerry. Government went BlackBerry. Yeah. When I've had a few, I thought they were very cool, but after a little while, they just I don't know. There wasn't enough support for them, enough apps for them, and a lot of other things.
Yeah, BlackBerry actually doesn't Android phone.
Not surprising.
If you go, again, you guys have an Android phone, I think the BlackBerry actually does.
I have seen those apps. I know some of those apps are still out there, but I didn't know if that was
That was the cool thing. That was like the, what did Apple have?
the store. Oh,
Yeah, it's crazy because yeah, BlackBerry and yeah. I thought that was pretty cool.
yeah. But we don't see that anymore because now, with the way things work, Apple lets you secure, and that was a big deal for them. Hey, you can use Apple devices and secure them internally on your network. Android, we know that was another big reason for Android. Okay, so whether it's our computer, laptop at a hotel, mobile phone at home, or at a movie, as long as we can access our network, we are going to have access to our files. And Josh does not need to create another user account. He doesn't have to say this is Josh Remote. Because we're dealing with Active Directory, he has the same login, and he authenticates the same way. What are quotas? You mentioned this before. It's just what the word says. You are giving an amount or a quota of disk space. And if you exceed that quota, you start losing information, or you have to increase the quota, or you can say, based on this 10 gig quota, I'm going to start deleting the old stuff and just rewriting it, or you get more space. So we've got quotas, reporting, classifications, getting into our file management. So the whole idea here, whether I make a change on 1, 2, or 3, 1, 2, or 3 will see those changes.
Don't they still have it kind of a way to tell something on that road? Like, you might have to do like some kind of software or service on the network to do that.
On the network,
They manage your phone without something there. I mean, what would do that on server?
I know you can send multi-factor authentications. So you can send authentication through a text, email on that device. Do you ever use Microsoft 365? Okay, if I have a phone, in fact, there is an app on Android, I believe it's on Apple too, and if you search it, it will be there. It's called Microsoft Authenticator. And it is a Microsoft app that you install on that phone if you want to authenticate that phone with your network. And how do I know? Because I tried to do it 3 weeks ago, and I couldn't remember the stinking password, and I got in this loop. I installed but it got me to a certain point through the browser, and then it said install Microsoft Authenticator, and that's what allowed me to do it.
Microsoft actually thinks you change the primary
For email, yep.
Right, it's like required to have a number on your
Mhm.
Android browser.
Yeah, and we can set those. You have to have a high security password. Did it show up?
Theoretically, like
Because my phone right now wants to that. I used to have this email set up. Set my phone and that key functionality. I'm like,
Yeah, but that's how if you want your phone to have access to it, you have to follow the corporate policies. And some people will actually get a second phone that is secure, and they keep them separate. Otherwise, what happens? We become the whole Hillary Clinton incident where somebody gets into their server, somebody reads her emails, even though she's got a BlackBerry and it's supposed to be more secure, they weren't securing it and putting those requirements on the back end. She probably said, I don't want to have to put in 3 passwords. I just want to be able to say 1, 2, 3 and see my data. You know, that's not, I don't care. I just want 1, 2, 3. That's just a guess.
It makes me want to scan a QR code or enter a code somewhere else. Who says that?
That would be sent through whoever your network is.
so that's asking,
Microsoft Office.
That's asking for two-factor authentication like you will mobile. So they send you an email at your computer. You scan that code with your phone, and it adds it to two-factor authentication. So that whenever you try and log into something, it will also send a code to like your computer. It will send the code to your phone so you can log into the phone, for instance. I manage my organization's cell phone at like 75 right now.
Sure.
And a couple of, hotspots and that kind of stuff. This is the essays that I have for my
Samsung?
Yeah.
How do you like that?
This is my
Okay.
S4 that I dearly love, and has absolutely no connection to my company.
Yeah, so you physically have two different ones.
Separate phones,
Yeah.
because they can wipe my shiny metal ass if they think they're gonna be able to read my email
Yep.
and and your text.
Yeah.
Anytime you have a company phone, whoever's managing your phone has complete full access to all of the text messages and any other conversations that you have through your phone, including a record of all the calls you make, how long you're on the phone,
Text
where your phone's
messages.
been at,
Yep.
even if the GPS and stuff is turned off.
Yeah. Well, because that company wants it to be secure.
Right.
If you want to work for them, you check the box. If you want that mobile access and synchronization, boom, you have to do it. And the person's going to say, whatever,
Right.
I'll do it, or I'll get a second phone, or you know what, I don't need it that bad.
Right.
I'd rather not have access or use a thumb drive or email myself the file for how often I use it.
And they tell us that we can use the work phone for our personal stuff as long as we want, as long as we don't jack up the data too much, because we want a big share of the implant.
And you also have to know if it's personal use, that personal use can be monitored.
Right. And your phone can be wiped at any time, and if you have personal pictures and stuff, that's tough luck. So what feature is that? That right here.
Not bad at all. And that's what we would do. So work folders. Domain. So the devices are going to be joined to the domain. Provides that single point of access, again, whether it's laptop, phone, PC. Offline access, so it's not like I necessarily have to be connected. As long as I connect, see those changes, I'll have access to the file. If I'm on my phone and I make changes there and I'm connected, it will automatically make the changes on our server. You don't have to sit there and email yourself, okay, I'm going to save this as Kyle file underscore 1A. Oh wait, no, the next one is Kyle file underscore 1B. So now I have all these different versions, so at the other end I can remember. Yeah. We have our SSL, port SSL 443, right? So it will secure socket.
Which one?
The transport layer security. I actually don't know. I don't know I don't remember what the default was. If it was TLS or if it was the other one.
I know, somebody's trying to catch that one. I was going way past.
The AES.
No, like the between the TLS and SSL.
Sure. SSL, I think, will be around much, much longer than TLS. And it's basically a dialect added to that security. All right, limitations, 2012 R2 and Windows 8.1. That's it. That's for storing them.
Probably SSL or SSL. The green and TLS came out at the end of the 90s.
Both.
Well, SSL 3.0 TLS 1.2.
Okay. Of course. Yes. Okay. It's basically all or nothing. Whatever's in the work folder will be synchronized. You can't limit. And it's basically for the one share. So you can't say, I've got 5 shares. I want all of them to be work folders. You are assigned a single work folder, and that's what you work with. So, yeah. But it's since R2.12, so 16 and the new versions from there on will have it. There's probably some differences that I don't know. Nope, it stayed. I'm sure there's some feature changes, but I actually don't know what those are. SharePoint's without having to know SharePoint and how that's. Yeah. I like SharePoint when it works. Most of our consulting services, we're using SharePoint as our point of access.
I can put SharePoint downside in one
that's where it starts to break. Or you have to do a lot more to make it work. All right, so requirements. 2012 R2, 8.1 client, SSL, and then of course NTFS, and what was the RE? Rufus? Resilient. Yep, and that's new as well in this server. So we need to have, and why would we boot a system to FAT32 now? Why would we format it, excuse me? Why would I choose to use FAT or FAT32 as a file system as opposed to NTFS? Okay. There was another thing that we don't do a lot now, but we used to be able to do dual boots. And you would want a FAT32 system for a dual boot. Mm-hmm. So we use dual boots with a client and then a upgraded client server, client and an upgraded client operating system. It's similar to Apple Parallels, and it's similar to our virtualization now. But that's the only thing, unless I needed backward compatibility, that I needed access to files that old that I would potentially have to format one for the other. Because you're limited to very small sizes. That's, I don't know, I knew it was for dual boot, but I don't remember the specific reasons. Yeah.
So after the people have one single file size of 4 gigabytes, why would you pull this off of a build that you're pretty low?
Test environment, that's what we did.
I mean, we did Windows had Linux, so we plugged it in.
That's correct. Nowadays, you just don't do it. Which was the first one that came out?
Before we built it, I did OS like that.
Early Windows.
Well, that makes sense.
Linux didn't work then for us because you have to have the driver support and all the other things depending on the boot.
I remember when freaking Mac came out with that boot camp or whatever it's called, where you can put XP and Mac on the same laptop.
Parallels.
I thought that was good.
Parallels, well, I know Parallels is Apple's software that runs different machines. And you can boot into a Windows operating system or Apple's operating system. Yeah. But I don't remember otherwise. Just know that I had to, well, their newer software does it, has it built in. But we used to have to install Parallels if we wanted to run Windows on our Mac visually, or I could run it in unison with.
I had to do it with our programming stuff.
Try getting confused with that. Because you're looking at a Mac desktop, yet you're doing Windows commands and working with Windows apps in your Mac desktop. Sometimes there were problems, but the answer was you could do it. You wouldn't have to have two machines. All right, so we have to install that service on our server. It has to be installed. IIS, right? That's our web server. Need to have that as well because we're going through the internet. IIS, Internet Information Services. That is correct. Yep. So we install work folders. We should already have the file server role, and then, of course, our web server role. This server now becomes easier to compromise, so you need to be careful. Clients, they could go into their control panels and install it there, or we can install it through group policy, which would probably be the bigger one. And then Microsoft's Intune app, or you can configure it through. But for most of us, we're going to do it through group policy. Some of us will say the user themselves can go through and do it. Server, oh, this is the same thing. Right, we have to create our share. We install the service, install our certificate server, which we're going to most likely have anyways. On the network client, again, manual, they enter their email address from their company email, and then based on that email, it will automatically be done. So this is the same thing we just saw. All right, you will do that in the lab. Questions on that? If I'm a small organization, can I use it? Sure. Should I? Sure. Do you have, let me rephrase that. Do you have employees that from home need to access their work files and you don't want to set up a VPN or some sort of a secure port? If you don't have users to do it, you don't want to add this resource to the server, but if you do, this is one of the options that you have without going to some sort of a point-to-point tunneling protocol, some sort of third-party service. And you can do it for more people.
It just does it over the internet.
Or the network, depending on where you are. Yeah. But it's authenticating through Active Directory and the web-based, which is why we need IIS. All right? Greg wants coffee. If anybody else wants coffee, go ahead and then we'll finish this. Or water, or whatever else. Yeah. Sure.
If I wanted to, in a sense, if I have Windows Server 2012 R2 and I wanted to authenticate Windows 7, would that be possible using the BAM tool? Or is that not going to happen because it's 2012 and not 2008? I tried doing that today, did not want to work, and I don't know if that was because I just put reliant on the internet, or if that was because it wasn't compatible.
And say the first part again, you're on
Server 2012
R2.
R2, and I want to authenticate other machines that have Windows 7. So I have the KMS key
Okay.
for
For their security key, yes.
and then I have the authentication key, the NAT key or whatever, for Windows 7. But I just don't, I could not get it to work. I couldn't really understand how the tool works. It wasn't very straightforward. And I was kind of reading along the internet and learning at the same time
Do you have other operating systems that could connect?
to the server.
Yeah, could you get 8.1 to connect? Could you get anything else?
I only have 7.
So you don't know.
Different for stuff. So right now there's restricted like 7 Pro.
I would hope. Well, if you're talking domain, it has to be pro,
Well, I was thinking, I don't think it's enterprise, but
or at least pro if you're joining a domain.
the issue was, for sure, can't connect directly, can't connect to the internet, can't hotspot it. So I initially tried it, so we both have KMS and Mac, and that's really
Okay.
I watched the video and I was like, every time they do crap like this in the building environment, it always works.
Yeah.
When you try to do it on an actual like machine,
Yeah.
like it doesn't work that well.
Is it KMS and like the NAT keys, aren't those meant for the manual machine? I can't remember what that stands for, but
AMS is the key management system that.
yeah, I know that.
That's the local certificate services installed, basically.
Eventually you should be able to like install it. Theoretically, you should be able to install that if you want to clone that or do that. Push that image out, that would work better.
Or
But KMS, but it literally, you said right there, KMS activated, you punch in that thing, and it comes up and says that it's not legit. I'm like, horseshit, that could be very legit.
does it say that there's a different version installed and it can't work with that version?
No, it just flat out says it's not.
Okay, so we got the key to work for 2012, and then the problem we had is we couldn't get, like when we tried it, for some reason on like the Microsoft like website where it was talking about it, it was saying that there should be like a tab on the right side of the tool
Okay.
to be able to like discover devices.
Sure. Okay,
You can never find that.
are there any policies or group GPOs or anything being applied that would remove or hide some of that?
This was just a fresh
Okay, were there any local policies? Because you can also go into the computer management and select local policies as well.
I literally just started up, got it turned to a domain, got Active Directory, got it, it was DNS, went on to and then started doing some shares, and then I put on that back, and then
Well, if stuff is or isn't showing up, to me that points more towards version issues. But based on you not installing any other version, and by versions not necessarily 7 to 8 or whatever it is, but there's certain builds within the different versions that can or cannot work. But to me, that sounds more like it's either just it's not compatible, therefore it doesn't show up, or it's using a build that is different. I don't know that specific problem, but I know typically in the past, if I have problems where I know something should be there and it's not, it's either I'm looking at the wrong software, I'm looking in the wrong place based on what I think, or there's something being done in the background that's locking or hiding or securing some of those things.
Yeah, basically the farthest we could get is we put in the MSP for Windows Server 2012.
Okay.
Now we needed that to like make it work in a sense. And then we tried to, we basically went through the whole process. And it's like, for some reason, once you get to the end of the process, it's like either close the tool or you click next, delete, devices, I guess, in a sense, or whatever, but we never had like a prompt to ever add devices, so the only device that's in there is the one that we literally just activated for the server 2012.
So it's deleting itself.
In a sense, that's what it wants to do, but we just close the tool and then reopen it, and then we're trying to find the add tool or whatever.
Uh-huh.
The closest we got really was, we ended up just adding another KMS, which is Windows 7. We were like, maybe we have to do that to the Windows 7 machine itself.
Okay.
We would remote in and then look, and then we were getting a firewall issue, but we had the WMI checked on the firewall security,
Sure.
and it still would work, even though that's what it said on Microsoft's website. Using the tool, that's the one security we have, and then you need to go check the WMI .in, WMIN or whatever. There's like 3 of them.
Yeah.
And we had all those checked and like everything, and it still would work. And so we like, I don't.
Well, WMI lets you get into the typically hardware settings on a particular computer. The Windows stands for the Windows instrumentation. So that's where you can deploy images or do other things based on physical hardware attributes, not just software. I don't know.
Yeah, it was,
I'd be curious.
yeah, it was very interesting.
I'd have to look a little bit, but to me it sounds like it's a version issue. I don't know if it would, if you do or don't have a key installed, I don't know that would or wouldn't show something.
Yeah, because the server itself is already authenticated.
Yep.
Because all the clients are.
And is it on a domain?
Yes.
Okay, so the server are the clients on domain yet?
Yeah.
So they've been authenticated on the domain?
They were, I don't know about that.
when I was doing that,
Like,
we couldn't even get past the installing.
yeah, then whenever we try to just do it, it wants us to touch the internet to authenticate.
Which wasn't bad, because we hotspot, we were connected to the internet, so it'd go out and touch it, but it would just say that it's not.
But I don't,
There's no way, I mean, there's no way that this would work, because a lot of companies are upgrading service, but still will use Windows 7 or Windows 8.
I would
So the activation
think so.
should work.
Unless there's a different, unless the key is not necessarily, is it individual key or is it a,
So it's we have 2 keys, and 2 keys up to 50.
so they have multi-seats?
Yeah.
Client,
They actually pull off their, not necessarily.
No, well, no, they want to get into our system, and we're like, look, you can't come in, we don't have, it doesn't matter what you tell them, we want this to access that box. Yeah, and it's because of the government. They want to help.
and you sure it's the right product key? And you're sure that there's availability of keys?
Oh, well, okay, I can't say yes or no to that. Maybe if I
To-
go out a certain amount of times of using that key, it's gonna still would work if you have to like call back to them, and then like,
They have to reset the expiration. Or a lot of times the product key is associated with the GUID on a physical device. So sometimes if you've replaced the hardware on that same computer, it won't let you install the new or the product key because it's saying, wait a minute, you have a new hard drive, the configuration has changed. That's where you would have to either say, you know what, I've got a whole bunch of extra licenses, or you call Microsoft and say, hey, I'm using the same computer, it has a different hardware configuration, and I need to be able to reuse that key. And they should at that point issue you a new key.
no, I think you probably, that's why, like, honestly, I was just so touched that graphic, and that's actually really
Well, that's the thing, we got the server 2012, and that speed where we were just trying to get to Windows 7 speed where it didn't want to.
Client as opposed to server.
Well, it said from the firewall, like, issue, like that error, it said that check your network. It didn't say check the client, it said check the network. So we figured that it was, on our server side, it was one of those firewall issues. We just couldn't figure out what it was, and I couldn't find it in the thing, but I was skim reading too, because I was trying to find the answer, not because every other,
And the server, does it have any of those restrictions put on its card or any sort of local software firewall settings?
honestly, I don't know. You might know, but
No, I was just wondering if because you can set up firewall policies at the local machine.
you're talking about like client-wise, but.
Well, client or server, whoever the host is, you can go ahead on the local network card, you can enable firewall on it and go through and open and close some of those ports.
Okay. Would that be like my bias?
There could be, there's a control panel that lets you go in. I don't know if it's actually under NIC, but there is a place that you can go and enable the local firewall. Most companies will disable it because they're using their own firewall.
But it's not in the regular firewall, it's in the firewall with the security. That's where we can get the options. But anyway, thank you for.
No,
But see, my issue though is if it was a firewall issue, it would just not work. That doesn't want.
I know my wife just bought me this shirt, but I did not know that, or that it costs that much. I hope not. Oh, maybe.
Do you think what's off in air about the CCP being valid if it's a firewall issue? Actually, wouldn't.
No,
I mean, like, you can't connect the server or something.
No.
I can see that, but
if it's not allowing the communication, no, I wouldn't think so.
you should just disable the firewall completely.
I know in some of our, it doesn't happen very often, but some of our labs, what used to happen is you would have to go and enable the firewall locally, and then you would try to connect to it, and you wouldn't be able to through another machine, and then you had to go shut off the firewall and turn it on your Cisco or something like that. All right, we have talked about this, so we won't need to go into as much detail, but one of the nice things with, since Windows 2000, 3, 8, 12 is the ability to deal with printing. And most of the time we are going to hear the term print server. So when you hear print server, what is one of the first things you think of? Somebody says, oh, I've got a print server at work I need to work on. Okay. Can a big printer have its own server operating system? Yes, absolutely. It's not necessarily Windows, but it can be a server-based control operating system on that. You can control client access, you can control features, all those. Web browser, yep. Yes, that would be probably a good example. And most of them have now some sort of a web interface. Yep. Yep. And of course we have our fax system. No, I'm just kidding. So we'll talk network printing, enhanced point to print, some new features there. Security, we have talked about that. We have talked about pooling, we'll look at that. Direct printing, and then deploying printers to clients. So, who is running a print server or network printing at work? Or even at home with several computers connecting to it? Yeah. I'm sure you're running them at work. Okay? Okay. How many printers would you say you have? Psylocke?
I don't know.
Over 100?
No, probably 50.
Between local or group?
Yeah, probably within the whole company, probably.
Okay.
I think we actually moved into this building to try to consolidate, like a couple of big servers.
Sure. Sure. So I worked for an ad agency, and they had, it was pretty cool. They were buying a new network printer. I mean, and we're talking like the huge, like from here to that wall, about $500,000 a piece. They had one from Xerox and they had one from HP. And we got a 1-month test for each one. And when that 1 month was over, we got rid of the HP and went with both Xerox. $1 million for 2 printers. But guess what we printed on it? We would print all of our ad tools, our marketing tools, our brochures that we would hand out. When we went to conferences and conventions, we would do all of that right here. Yeah, and that, for us, it was cheaper in the long run to do that than have to send those things to the, now, we still send them to the press or to the print shop at some point. So for us, we had to have a print server because we had 140 people accessing at least these 2 just massive printers. Okay? And I didn't want to deal with each person or each group. I put it on the server and I can control some of it that way. Kinko's, FedEx Kinko's, whatever it is now, they've got tons of printers. They're going to be doing the similar thing. But we're still dealing with a server concept. I am controlling it through one tool or one server as opposed to multiple. Troubleshooting, it does help because you only have a few places to work with. Lower total costs compared to more total costs. Compared to probably man hours of dealing with a local print solution as opposed to network printing. Now some people will connect to Wi-Fi, USB, whatever they choose to for local, but
Especially when you get a place that has no control over it. Everyone has their own printer, all of them have counter.
yep, here's $100. Go to Staples, and as long as it's under $100, we'll buy it.
Secretary of State office, is that right? Elected officials. You guys are way better off than
Saying that now.
Oh, yeah.
Have you ever been in there?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, he's not one of the better elected, better paid
I'm
elected.
talking like money back, man. That's
Tell you straight up. Anyway,
So I've taught everybody, remember my HP solution? We have all the campus, we have all the buildings, each floor, group of printers to manage that floor. Can I print to other server farms or other rooms? Yes, but typically it's going to be where I am locally. Some companies like an HP, a Micron, they have administrators that are just print administrators. They don't do anything else except deal with the print servers and the printing. Sure. As opposed to be more niche.
That's been really my biggest obstacle in my career, and that I have not specialized.
Yeah. We did say in the past, specialized helped. If you were really good at C++, networking, programming, nowadays with the market the way it is and people, the company now says, I want somebody who's good at email, networking, web services, and they're going to get that person because now they can be more picky. All right, point and print uses the version 4 driver, as opposed to the version 3. I'm not sure the actual year that we're dealing with 4. What is one thing, if I have not connected to a printer, this particular printer, and I want to print, what are some of the things that must happen to my client or the server for me to be able to print? I don't care. I have to have permissions to it. Group policy assigned, local, print server assigned. What's that? Thank you. Has to have the ability to install. And where do those drivers get installed? The client needs them from the server. Now, we do not need to have client installed drivers because the server can now maintain it completely.
So funny.
If I'm printing to that machine through my print server, I do not have to go to the print server, install the client software to print to that machine. If I go and print through this server, I connect, the print server has the drivers for me, it talks directly to the printer, and I don't have to do the client installation.
So it doesn't actually install the driver.
Not on the client.
Really?
Yep.
I apparently have been under that.
Yeah, right here. Print servers do not need to store the client print drivers.
You use Whack Silock in this case. It shows you a list of all the printers that have print servers on that server.
Okay.
Double click on it, and it's not installing drivers on your client.
If you're dealing with the new version, yes, that's one of the options.
Right. Well, that's
Yeah.
When he's talking about the software, you don't need to download like the bundle from HP. You just need to download the actual like driver.
he's telling me that you don't even have to have a driver installed on the client because it's printing it like through an agent directly to the.
More of a relay. Right, so our driver files, we still have the one driver. One driver can, and this is something that's going to be developed through HP or the printers. Nowadays, we see software that supports multiple types of printers instead of 1-to-1, 1-to-2. You can install the HP package and you get access to all of them. Single driver, they're typically smaller and you can install faster. The print driver and the interface can be deployed, and so you can actually install print drivers separately from that. And I'll show you in. Yes.
Print driver and the printer user interface can be displayed independently. It doesn't mean that they're not displayed.
Let me.
Believe me, I'm not trying to be argumentative.
No, no, no.
I just want to make sure I understand. Because I remember this discussion, and we double clicked on that print server icon, that it installed a driver on the device.
I used to put the driver file in there, like use when I had my printer and it downloaded.
So, not sure what page you're on. I'll show it to you. Okay, so this will be inside of your lesson. This is going to be in lesson. Lesson 4, configuring network printing.
Yes, got it.
All right, so 2 pages in, talks about the version 4 driver models. Sharing a printer does not require provisioning drivers to match clients. Driver files are isolated on a per basis, preventing naming conflicts. A single driver can support multiple devices. Driver packages are smaller, similar to, this is basically the slide, but underneath it has that bold. Using enhanced point and print for driver installation.
Right, but this is driver installation.
Okay, when you use enhanced point and print, you no longer need to maintain print device drivers on the print server. Driver installation for network print devices become faster because print drivers are no longer needed to be transferred over the network to the client. That's the middle paragraph on that page.
That if the driver store on the client machine does not contain the driver for the network printer machine installed, and if the appropriate driver cannot be obtained from the Windows Update or Windows Update services, Windows uses a callback mechanism to enable cross-platform printing by using print driver on the print server.
Correct.
But
So I guess in some way there could be a default print driver that it uses.
yeah, leave that there.
So there's a little bit of difference here when we're dealing right here with the enhanced point. Okay. Security options. Basically, you don't have a lot of security options. You have those that can manage the printer and can manage any jobs on the printer. You have the policy or the permission that lets you manage other people's jobs, and typically everybody can manage their own print jobs. Okay, so we've got those 3 settings. The print, manage this printer, and manage documents. And that's up to you how you decide or how you want people to be able to do that. Do you get called all the time because there's a problem, they need you, and is Stephanie over in accounting, is she competent enough that you can give her elevated permissions to do that? So basically, we can manage the print server or manage our own jobs. Printer pooling. Remember this? Questions on printer pooling. What was the basic concept of printer pooling? If we can remember the HP environment.
So that you can actually send a print job to a printer. If it's busy, you'll send it to another one.
Okay, so I've got a print, what's that? Correct. And the higher up will give you the different priority. So in this case, with HP, I've got the print server. I've got 10 physical printers connected to that print server. So basically, those 10 printers are locally connected to that server. When Josh wants to print, he prints to the print server, and is it going to print on 1, 3, 7, or 9? Depends. 1 and 3 might be busy. 7 might be broken. 9 might be locked up by somebody else. Well, that's the same as being busy. 9 might work, but as he's sending his print job, somebody else says it with a higher priority, boom, he's bumped down. Now, how does he know what printer to go to? That's the catch. Hopefully the printers are all in the same area. You do not want to set up printer pooling round robin and say, I want 1 physical printer there, 1 there, 1 there, and 1 there to this same print server. Because Josh is going to go, nope, it's not here. Nope, it's not there. Nope, it's not on the physical. Not with pooling. But he's getting exercise. So what we'd want to do is have all the physical printers here, 1, 2, 3, 4. When he prints to the print server, it's going to be one of those 4. HP, they basically have their own print centers, So they actually have a person that is going through managing that. So when Josh goes up, they're going to say, here's your stuff. Most don't have that at that scale, but of course here it's the printer division. So printer, and that is printer pooling. Available since 2000. So almost 20 years now, this has been an option. Many physical printers pointing to one print device. Okay. If I have trouble printing, if 3 of them are broken, Josh gets upset, threatens to quit. Okay, we're going to bring in 4 new printers. We can add or remove printers to that pool if we choose to. Yeah. No, it should, but yeah. Requirements and suggested model, yeah.
You can save yourself a lot of heartache.
And if your employees are pissing you off, I'm going to put 1 in one building, 1 out in the basement, and 1 up on the roof. Let them go get them wherever they want to. All right, so the whole idea with this is if you have many physical, Josh can now print. He doesn't have to wait for Stephanie, Mark, Mary, whoever to go through their print jobs. We now have several different printers, physical printers. If I don't have many physical printers, Josh is going to try to print to server 1, busy. All right, let's try printing to server 2, busy. All right, let's try server 4, busy. As opposed to saying, let me print here, and it just shoots it.
But it does not tell you like when you print it, your job to be available.
Not physical.
So how do you know? All that should show like printer station, how you know which one to do it.
There may be HP software that can pop up and do it.
I was looking at like any columns on that floor, I probably suggest that you don't want them to
That could be an issue. So maybe you don't put them in the pool. And the other thing with printer pooling, if you need it, you can actually install certificate services and enable encryption on that print server as well. So now, the only people that can send it, if I'm NSA, I can now send to that printer, and the traffic to and from it will be encapsulated in IPsec or whatever we choose to. Yeah.
That apparently a lot of security stuff is going overseas because companies would take their machine off a lease,
Yeah.
recycle the machine.
And they weren't getting wiped.
Some place would take the hard drive,
Yep.
overseas or whatever, and scan them all.
They weren't wiped properly. All right, so here we go, the Office Direct. So we have our machine making a request to the print server. The print server is going to, so instead of me going here, I have the server, I go to print, the print server responds and basically forwards me or sends me, as a proxy, sends me to that managed server. Okay, so the individual laptop isn't talking straight to the physical printers, it is talking to the print server that then directs it from there. And that's the direct printing, if we choose to. And this would be more if you're going through a WAN, MAN, CAN, whatever your connection is, and you want to be able to print. You don't want to have a print server for every single printer or location. You can now have one print server managing several of those pools or groups. Printers, we should know by now that almost anything can be put out there with group policy. We'll see that later tonight and tomorrow. Group GPOs, there is also a printer account that has access to it. If you don't, so you don't want your enterprise admin or your schema admin, you can create your print managers group. And if we're dealing with organizational units, depending on your structure, you can put them manage printers, and go that way. Yeah. Login scripts will do it, absolutely. Do you ever use SneakerNet? Or, sorry, WheelChunNet? That was good.
Shots fired.
I don't want you to exclude you.
Think you're crap like everyone else. Okay.
No, but what SneakerNet, right? You go around to, this is what your boss does, or the guy you work with, right? He likes the physical disk. Go to each physical machine. Whoosh, whoosh. I was kidding.
Oh,
I know.
no, I privilege. No, that's why I was based off Doctor talking to him. So, computer system properties, right?
Uh-huh.
Quick start, like computer property.
Uh-huh.
Goes from there to control panel. And then control panel, from start control panel, then academic property.
Does he have to change the view? So it's not the icon view, but it's a list view? Or the small view?
Yeah, just like everything he does, like 10 steps.
What's that?
And we do feedback.
Well, and you have to know that Microsoft is very good, and it's one of the reasons people kind of like Android, is they give you many different ways to accomplish the same task. You can, if you want to copy paste, Control C, Control V. My dad highlights, copy, highlights, paste. He likes to see that physical, okay, I'm copying something and I'm pasting something.
I depends on what I'm doing. Sometimes I know that sometimes Control C doesn't match. So I'll sit there and hit Control C like 4 or 5 times.
Correct. Yep. You can, depending on your keyboard, some keyboards have shortcuts on them as well. If you're developing your own program for your network, the programmer can assign F keys or other keys to do certain things. What about crap? Huh? You can still do macros. Mm-hmm. Sure. Oh, sure. I had something to say. Dang it, this is twice. SneakerNet. Crap. No. And I had it again as you were talking, and then I lost it. Have you ever heard the, God dandruff, some of it itches? Instead of, gosh darn it, you're a son of a gun, I can go, God dandruff, some of it itches. That's the level of my swearing. I know. I'm right on the edge, man. All right. Questions on printer pooling or setting up a print server? Yeah. Hold it. I just thought of it. Sorry. Okay. Okay, it wasn't yesterday. Okay, when you're doing copy paste, how often have you ever gone into an application or a web page and you go highlight and right click to copy and it says you cannot copy this information, or it won't even let you select? Okay, how is that telling me I can't copy paste? Could be GPOs, depending on the tool. Let's say we're in a web browser. It'd be some of the code. Server-based, could be VB script on the client. It could be something from the server. Most of the time, it's when you have sensitive documents. Of course, you could take a picture of it, or sometimes screenshots disabled too.
So we actually tried grabbing an actual PowerShell to do some stuff, and like you could
It's invisible. Yep.
Way to do a screenshot.
Yep. And you have some printers that will print just the actual viewing space instead of everything below it. There's also some settings that say print the whole as opposed to separate.
That's why they install it on the roof and stuff, like they didn't set it up properly.
Yeah.
So the printer's like, what we did, in a little column.
Yeah.
Where they invented
The different tabs. Yeah.
Printed out, put it in your scanner.
If you've ever done Microsoft, Cisco, CompTIA testing, you would not be able to highlight and copy paste those.
Is there a way to print keyboard that you set up, like capturing whatever printed, like, say, GPF,
Third party,
GPF is awesome.
yeah. Like capturing print jobs, those things? Yes,
The XPS, Microsoft XPS printer capable of doing that?
I believe so.
You guys ever get a PDF that's like locked or blocked or whatever? Open it in Chrome. Or save as and save the PDF and just do that.
Third-party software, you can also set up auditing. So it can actually audit jobs coming into that. In fact, when I was back at the advertising company, when we had those two big printers, they said print anything you want as often as you want. So we had guys printing thousands of pages for flyers and goofing around just to run it to death for that month. And after that 30 days, nothing. You cannot print anything. And the guy would come around about every day and say, hey, Kyle, what about this print job? And because it would say Kyle selling car 1989 or whatever it was. I was working on it for a client. No, he goes, no personal jobs. So after a while, you got smart and you renamed the file customer 23 marketing tool. And so when that print queue, when that word would go through, he didn't really know what it was. That was cheating. I never did that. Somebody else did.
Still has actual image for printed.
Yeah, they can be stored. Yeah. So yeah, but mostly third party unless you're going to go through some auditing. Not through the print server. I don't know if there's GPO. I can look and see. There might be a GPO that can deal with some of that. 2016 print server maybe. I don't know on the 16. All right. Do the lab.